In my review of Les Miserables, which was in December, I mentioned that one of my favorite genres in film was the movie musical genre. And I realized that I rarely ever talk about musicals on my channel. And for Les Miserables being the one musical I talked about, which, as you all know, I really despised, to me that's kind of heresy. I feel like I need to talk more about them, even though a lot of people don't really get into them. It's my channel, and I feel like I should contribute to the musical genre, at least my favorite films, anyway. But so this is going to be my top 10 films, favorite musical films, and this was a very difficult list to make because I love musicals. I am such a huge musical theater nerd. And I could easily put 10 extra films on this list, even 15 if I wanted to, but no, I will spare you all the torture and just keep it down to 10. And to keep in mind that this is going to be my own list, so some of these films that I have on here are sentimental favorites, and some are higher than maybe others should be. But again, it's a subjective thing, it's my opinion, and I can only vouch for that. But this is going to be from 10 to 1, number 1 being my favorite as always, and let's start with number 10. So my first film, number 10, is Meet Me in St. Louis, which came out in 1945. And this stars Judy Garland and Margaret O'Brien, among others, and is directed by Vincent Minnelli. Now, this film, to me, what really stands out about it is sort of the underlying theme of the film, which is, this sense of warmth and love and family. And that's something that just really appeals to me. And the way it's conveyed in the film, to me, is completely essential and really well done. It's, again, directed by Vincent Minnelli. I love Vincent Minnelli. To me, he is one of the great musical directors of Hollywood and of all time. Of course, he met Judy Garland in this film, and they eventually got married and had Liza Minnelli. And I adore Liza Minnelli. I know some people don't like her, but I adore her and all her diva-ness. It's not even a word, but you get my point. But anyway, so I think what he does so well in musicals is create this vivacity, this vibrance, and he has the colors really pop, and he's just an artist. Visually, he is definitely an artist. And this film is a lot more tame than a lot of his other works, and I'm going to get to other ones because I have a couple more on my list that were directed by Vincent Minnelli, coincidentally. But this one, to me, is more tame because the story is more kind of little vignettes. It's basically about a family in the early 1900s, and it's a coming of age story. It's about the children and the parents, learning about love and loss and growing up and that sort of thing. All those typical things that we really love in movies. But I think that kind of lush vibrancy that Vincent Minnelli brings to it and that nostalgia really gives it something personal. And I think what really makes the film work, again, there's three things. Vincent Minnelli, which I just talked about, to the music. The music is fantastic. And you're going to hear me say that a lot in a lot of these musicals, but I mean, that's why they're my favorite musicals. A lot of times it's because of the music. That's sort of the central piece of many of the films. The music here is genius. There's so many great songs. I mean, you've got, of course, the main Meet Me in St. Louis theme, and then you've got The Boy Next Door, the Trolley song, which to me is a masterpiece. I love that song. Listen to it all the time. And then, of course, there's Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, which is probably the most famous one, and it completely breaks your heart. And it is a wonderful, wonderful song. And what makes those songs so memorable is, of course, that they are sung by the brilliant, magnificent, timeless Judy Garland. I, I may have mentioned this before, but I love Judy Garland so much. She is one of my favorite entertainers, favorite musicians, or I should say singers, easily of all time, for me personally. And I think she's one of the best singers of the 20th century, certainly. But I mean, it's not just that. I think she's a great actress as well. I think why she really holds up so well is because she's got everything. She has a wonderful sense of humor in her work. She's vulnerable. She has a real maturity to her acting, even at such a young age. I mean, even when she made this film, I think she was only about 21 years old. And she just has this ability to really be relatable and make you want to care for her. And that is something that a lot of people strive for but never quite capture, or some of them don't quite capture it. I think she is right on the money. And of course, as a singer, she is one of those people. I've mentioned that, I'm not necessarily a crier when it comes to movies, but when she sings a song, I melt. I become weak at the knees. I cry every time. And In this film, when she sings "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas," it just kills me every time. I weep buckets, and that's kind of embarrassing to admit, but it's true. I just anything Judy Garland does, I'm willing to get into because of just she's just got the most, to me, most wonderful voice and most mature voice. It's like, I don't know, it's like velvet or something like that. But this film really, I think a lot of people can really enjoy if you can get past the fact that it's very hokey and very sugary. I think it really works because it kind of understands itself, and it's very kind of, I mean, it understands the genre, and it completely is grounded in the genre, which, Vincent Minnelli understands in all his films. But Meet Me in St. Louis, it's a great Christmas movie. If you're going to watch a movie over Christmas, that's definitely one of the ones you should watch. Number 9 is Sweeney Todd, the Demon Barber of Fleet Street, which came out in 2007. And this is directed by Tim Burton and stars Johnny Depp and Helena Bonham Carter. I've talked a little bit about Sweeney Todd. I mentioned it in my Les Miserables review, and the reason I did was because the two films, I don't want to say the films, but the stories are kind of similar in terms of the plot structure, in terms of some of the characters. You'll notice some similarities. But to me, this is the one film that I really like in the past 10, even 20 years. I'll go so far as to say that. I mean, really, I haven't liked a Hollywood musical since maybe the 1980s, with the exception of this one. To me, everything that Les Miserables got wrong, which was quite a lot in my opinion, this one gets right. I love Tim Burton as a director. I think he's wonderful in terms of how he's able to shoot a musical sequence. He once said, or I think I heard him say once, that he wasn't a fan of musicals. I find that hard to believe because he did direct Nightmare Before Christmas, or sorry, well, he didn't direct it, but he produced it or whatever, wrote it. Nightmare Before Christmas, and he directed the Corpse Bride, sorry, and of course this film. So I think he likes musicals more than he lets on. But I think this is the best one he's done, and it's probably the best film he's made since Ed Wood, maybe, in my opinion. But this one, it's just, he really understands how to film a musical sequence, as I said, but also he understands how to, at the same time, kind of give a sense of character development. He understands the characters, and he has such a wonderful visual eye, which to me is just the essence of Tim Burton. Now, at times this can be a disadvantage because sometimes Burton becomes a little bit too wrapped up in the visuals and not enough in the characters. But I think this is a great instance of just a harmonious blend of music, characters, and music. And I love the juxtaposition of tones in the film. You've got humor and a sort of lightheartedness with the music, but then it's also very tragic and certainly grotesque. This movie is rated R for a lot of gore and violence, as you will see, or if you have seen the movie. But the story is, of course, about Johnny Depp, who's this barber who's out for revenge after he was falsely accused and ripped away from his family. He wants revenge on the people who did it to him. So he is a barber in London, and he is a tenant of Mrs. Lovett, who is kind of his partner in everything. And she has a meat pie shop. And basically, what he does is he shaves people, slits their throats, and then the corpses are then turned into meat pies for the public. So, yes, kind of grotesque, as you can see. But I love the way that it's never gratuitous. Or, well, I mean, it is, but in a way that's cheeky and it's making fun of itself. He shoots the film in a sort of German expressionist horror style, which is kind of his trademark, or Burton. It's kind of like Nosferatu or The Cabinet of Caligari, that film, movies from like the 20s and even before that. And when you watch all of this gore, all the blood spraying everywhere, it's like it's kind of gross, but at the same time you're kind of laughing at it, and you wonder, should I be laughing or not? And it's just great. I love the complexity of that, and I love the idea behind it. It's about how far people are willing to go for revenge at the most basic level. And it's just about the animalistic nature of humans. And I love stories like that because a lot of times people are afraid to show it. And if you liked the film Les Miserables, you need to see this movie if you haven't already, because I guarantee you it is a better, more complex, more interesting film than that one. And I know it's supposed to be opinion, but I'm right. And my number eight film is The Wizard of Oz, which came out in 1939, and it's directed by Victor Fleming, and it stars Judy Garland. Um, I mean, who hasn't seen Wizard of Oz? Who doesn't love The Wizard of Oz? I mean, if you haven't seen it, I won't judge you, but really, that's a little bit weird. But it's one of those movies that everyone knows, and it stood the test of time for decades, like a lot of films did in 1939. The director of this film, Victor Fleming, also directed Gone with the Wind in the same year, so that's kind of monumental. But to me, everyone, I mean, on a basic level, yes, there are reasons why people love The Wizard of Oz, and Roger Ebert pointed it out in his Great Movies book. He talked about um, the film and why he thinks people love it. And he talked about the fact that it's just a very famous allegory. It's a coming of age story, much like Meet Me in St. Louis is. Actually, there are a lot of parallels between those two films. But, you've got a character, Dorothy, and, it's a coming of age story about this girl who lives at home and she eventually goes out into the world and is trying to find herself, and she meets a lot of people along the way and all this stuff. And it's just a very famous allegory that's been told a million times. It's been told in Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. It's in Gone with the Wind. It's something we hear all over and over again. But I think that's kind of a simplistic reading of it. I mean, yes, I understand why people get into it, but I think there's more than that because there's so many films like that. But I think there is something beyond that people just really do love about The Wizard of Oz. And I think a lot of it comes from Judy Garland, number one. I know I love Judy Garland so much, but really, I think she's one of the things that really keeps this film, she's the glue that holds it together. And originally, it was supposed to be Shirley Temple who was going to be Dorothy in the film. And thank the Lord that did not happen because it would have been a completely different film. And with Judy Garland, I mean, again, the character could have so easily fallen into that cutesy Shirley Temple, Margaret O'Brien territory. But with somebody like Judy Garland, somebody that's really mature and understands characters and is a wonderful actress and singer, she nails it. And I think that, when she sings Somewhere Over the Rainbow, it's one of the most wonderful moments in movies. I mean, everyone loves the song, and it is a genius, brilliantly written song, but I think a lot of what makes it so famous is the way that she sings it. It's just wonderfully innocent and vulnerable, and there's so many shades in her performance. And also, that's one moment where I lose it every time, brings me to tears, but it's just whenever she is emotional in the film, like towards the end when she's captured by the witch and she's saying, "I'm frightened, Annie M," and all of that, and she's crying, bawling her eyes out because she's scared. She's not faking it. I mean, it doesn't seem fake to me. I mean, whereas a lot of the other performances, like the Scarecrow or the Tin Man and all those characters, they come off as very dated, kind of vaudevillian performers, which they were. But Judy's performance to me has a kind of timeless quality to it. When she's crying, when she says goodbye to these characters at the end, I mean, it breaks my heart. It kills me every single time because she just has this charisma and power about her acting that's just so effective. And I think it really does resonate with audiences. And also, Victor Fleming as a director is just, to me, a revelation. I mean, what he's done in this movie is miraculous. There is magic to this movie. And I know that phrase can be kind of cliche, saying a movie is magic, but really I think this film does create a sense of magic, viscera. I will never forget the first time I saw the movie after the tornado, and uh, Dorothy wakes up and all of a sudden she opens the door and the film immediately goes from black and white into color. That is an amazing, amazing moment. I just absolutely will never forget it. I'll never forget when she sang Over the Rainbow. I'll never forget the Munchkin Land and all of that. There is a sense of awe and wonder about this movie, the way that it's directed, that I think really is powerful. And, not every film that has that same allegorical context can really say that. So that's why I think Wizard of Oz is a great film.